Hi, I'm Paul Blunden. I'm founder of UX247, and we help product owners, designers, and researchers deliver high-performing products and services. Today's interview is in my series with product owners and leaders. We'll be finding out how the role has changed over the last few years, what are the key challenges they face, how customer-centric their organizations are, and even how AI is starting to play a role. So let's meet my first guest. Hi, Rob, and thank you very much for giving up your time to speak with me today. For the benefit of the people who don't know you, can I ask you to start by introducing yourself?
Yeah, hi, I'm Rob. I'm a senior product manager at MoneySupermarket. So I specifically work on a cashback business called Quidco, which was acquired by MoneySupermarket just over 18 months ago, I think now. So I've been at MoneySupermarket for about 18 months. Previously, I was at Tesco and Avios, so varied experience of small and large kind of organisations doing product development and product management.
And how long have you been in this sort of product area overall, and what attracted you to it?
So I've been in product for about 5 years, and I must admit I fell into it. So I didn't make a conscious decision to work in product. I made a very conscious decision to work in a team that Avios used to have that was focused a lot more around digital innovation and looking at how emerging and new technology could really solve business and customer problems. I think it's fair to say we spent a lot of time doing things with tech looking for problems rather than looking at our customers' problems and how we could solve them. And we had a change of direction at Avios that meant we focused more on the latter. So kind of it was either you do this or you go. So it was very much I fell into it and have kind of grown and navigated my way through product just from that initial experience really, and haven't felt the need to go and do something different.
Okay. And I mean, that last 5 years, it feels to me, I mean, I'm very much on the sort of outside looking in, but it does feel like the role and function of product has changed quite a bit. Have you noticed it sort of evolve over that period?
I think for me, I've noticed it change, but more around how the organizations that I have been in has changed, rather than seeing the trend in the market change. So I think, when I think about some of the transformation that Avios IG Loyalty has been on, we getting to a position where actually we're looking more holistically at what the customer wants and how we focus on every touch point that the customer interacts with, whether that's marketing and pricing and the physical product that someone is interacting with, and then all the accountabilities that go with it. So almost you're getting into that state of a mini CEO who's got a revenue line, a cost line, and controls he's almost like the king of something, versus there are sort of bigger corporates and other corporates who are working in a very different way where, sometimes product is very much leading on just what the customer interacts with and doesn't touch anything else, or actually, is more focused on how do I make the day-to-day delivery work, and how do I ensure that the customer is protected within that delivery, rather than necessarily starting with what does the customer need and want and then drive what's happening. So I think we've reached a bit of a funny point as product people, because we're trying to do everything. You can see there just across those 3 different experiences is a real range of skills that people need. And I think every organization is kind of freely interpreting what it wants product to be based on the people that they have and the skills that are available, rather than necessarily the nature of the job changing more structurally. But that's just how I have seen it, and certainly a lot of my peers are sort of feeling that change as you move it across across organizations is different, rather than necessarily the market always changing to be in a different place.
Yeah, that's a really interesting perspective, and kind of mirrors what I think I'm seeing is this potentially elevation of product, certainly in some organizations. And I love the analogy of sort of the mini CEO of kind of everything. I guess, therefore, the accountabilities for product owners are changing as well. I mean, what do you see the sort of key accountabilities that product should own?
I think from my perspective, product should always be accountable to the customer. That's the key point, right? So we're trying to make sure that everything that the customer touches and they interact with is something that meets their need, and product is doing that prioritization and that internal trade-off conversation between, we need to do something as a business which is going to equal moving a particular metric or a particular driver to increase whatever that metric is, but it can't be done at the expense of the customer. So everyone in an organization needs to be customer focused, but product is right at the front there in terms of being accountable that everything that the customer touches is something that adds value or doesn't add friction to what they need. And I think, the second part of that is being the voice of the customer within an organization, is being really, really focused on making sure that if you're treating your customer right, you will get the growth that you want, and you will see where things move and flow into the right direction. For me, that is the core accountability for someone in product. As you add other functions, you will obviously get different accountability. So if you're accountable for, if you've got P&L accountability, then of course you're going to be held accountable for that. But you have to keep to that kind of really true perspective of, I'm here doing what I should do for the customer and doing what's right by the customer, and that will drive my revenue numbers. And really, really focusing on keeping the customer core and at the center of what the organization is doing.
And in your view, then, I take it you think it's really important to have customer in the product development process. It's not just an accountability, is that right?
I would say so, yeah, 100%. And there's different ways of doing that. It's not always about, doing I've got to get a panel of customers in every time I want to make a change. It's about, okay, where can I start with my roadmap? What are the problems that my customer has? Do I understand them? Can I identify them? Can I validate them? I can use data to do that. I can use research to do that. I can use interviews to that. I can just talk to the people in my contact center who talk to our customers day in, day out. That customer closeness doesn't mean that I have to be physically with a customer every time, but they need to be there in every part of the process, and they need to be thought about at every stage of the software development cycle.
Interesting. And do you face any challenges sort of making that happen?
I think the challenges that I see are at the extremes of research, if I'm honest. So where you struggle, or I have seen the struggle with getting customers into that process, is a misunderstanding at senior and exec level about when does research come and when does research deliver. And normally you see someone who's been burnt by trying to do a multi-year program with multi-year research that's attached to it, rather than understanding I can do something really quick and dirty by standing in the street and asking 15 people a question. There's this kind of perception of, I don't have time to wait for research. I don't have time to wait to find out what the customer wants. And actually, that's the mindset that you have to try and change and show, well, I've just looked at this data, which is 15,000 customers that used our product yesterday. This is how they behaved with it because I can see the right analytics. Or I was able to go out and talk to just 10 customers, which is enough to give us what we need. And we asked them 5 questions. Here's what they said. That will give us a really good steer. And that doesn't need to be a really complicated, heavy piece of research that happens. It just needs to be that sense of talking to the right type of person really quickly to kind of bring in that steer and that understanding. So I think that's where the challenge really comes, is having some involvement with the customer in a way that allows you to get to that value and understand the right problem quickly, rather than saying, oh, I've got to set up a full CSAT. I need to go and do an RFP on 3 different research organizations. You're then going to take 6 months to contract and get it all set up. I think that's where the challenge comes. You see the best success where leaders understand I know that I can get quick and dirty insight back to just validate whether it's the right thing. And it might come back that it's inconclusive. So it then becomes a product conversation about, well, actually I can get it live and get more data about it fast. so that we can then join those two together and go, was this the right thing? Is it going to work? Should we build this out properly?
And how customer centric are the brands that you've worked with?
I think they're all customer centric in a different way. So if we look at what we're doing at MoneySupermarket at the moment, we know where our customer challenges are. I think we're doing a good job at really identifying them more through data and being able to really drive up where our opportunities based at. I think we're a little bit scared of talking to our customers, if I'm honest, and kind of adding that verbatim and more qualitative research over the top to really understand, okay, I can see that customers aren't using the product as frequently as we want. Why is that? I can see in data that you don't come to our product very frequently, but why? That why is never really easily answered. I think if I look at Tesco, they are 100% focused on how do I get the right thing to the customer at the right time. They've got a huge global operation that is looking at every part of the supply chain. They're looking at every interaction that a customer has. They have so much data. They have so much research that is ongoing. And actually the challenge there is, which customer are we talking about? And how are we identifying them? How are we talking about them? And if I think back to sort of IG loyalty and the things we were doing around the Avios program there, actually we started a lot more with why. Why was a real problem for us around understanding the mindset and the mentality, and then being able to work out what we should do, and then use the data to backfill our understanding of did we understand the why, and are we then getting the incremental success that we need to have. So I think brands generally are quite customer centric and quite customer focused, but the way that they identify and talk to their customer and use that information within the development life cycle and building out products is all very different, and there are different challenges in different organizations around how you do that.
That you've covered quite a number of challenges there, and I'm trying to build a sort of picture of the key problems product owners are dealing with. Do you have a sort of top 3 things that product owners sort of struggle with?
I think the first one is always capacity. So I think you will have seen, and I'm sure you'll find this talking to other product owners, the role is different everywhere and the expectation is different everywhere. So you're constantly being pulled into specializing in different areas in different organizations, which just takes up the bandwidth. So in certain organizations, you'll find product managers who are a lot more strategic. They're thinking big picture, broad stroke. They tend to be the types of product owners who can really get into the detail around research. In those areas, you'll find they're just focused on the delivery, which gives them very little space to think about anything else. I think the first challenge really is that capacity around to be able to do the things that make you a good 360 product owner, product manager. I think the second challenge really is that navigating what role should they play. So what is the role of product? I think if you asked every product owner in any organization, they would say to you, I'm not doing product, because they've got a different experience from somewhere else. And as an industry, it's not the same as finance. You don't go and get a qualification that says, I can do product. You get something that says you can do software delivery, which is different to product. And it's about your role within that software development life cycle, rather than there's a really clear SEMA equivalent that we go, that's the standard for a product manager, because every organization treats product slightly differently. So there isn't that consistency there for products. So finding that role that you can play, where are you stretching the boundaries? Where are you doing the things that are more interesting to you personally, but maybe don't fit the organization? I think there's always some of that challenge. And I think the third one actually is access and availability of data. Now, most product managers will tell you that they have access to data, but what they've got is hose pipes of analytics. What they don't have is the ability to really easily synthesize down and focus on what are the metrics that I need to move, and I can measure them really easily myself. So if we take something like some stuff that comes out of the box, right? Google Analytics, that will give you so much data about a user, but actually then being able to distill it down into the things that are really important and the things that you need to move is a challenge. As we continue to build product, we generate more data. So there is a challenge around navigating all of the data that we have. You then add in, I do a load of research and join it on top, like how I join all of that together to then create a consistent and coherent story. It's something that I see product managers struggling with every day. Is I've got all of this data. How do I make sense of it? How do I choose what I'm going to measure? Which metrics I choose to look at and move is a really key area that we see struggles with.
That's really, really interesting. And I think a couple of those link neatly to something I wanted to ask about, which is what is the sort of product owner's toolkit or the tech that's being used? Because it feels like there's opportunities there with, you know, people being short of time or difficult to prioritize or get the insight they need or data they need. Is there a tech stack that's emerging, or how does it work in your experience?
I think the pandemic has changed things a little bit. So I would have said to you pre-pandemic, the best toolkit that a product owner has is time and a set of post-it notes and some pens, because that's where you tend to drive out the right conversation. You can bring people together. You can do that kind of, okay, I'm going to stick you in a room for half an hour or an hour or whatever, half a day, 2 days, 5 days, whatever it takes to work out what is it that we need to do and then actually do it. That's now shifted into a lot more of an online world, and I'm sure every product owner works with some mural equivalent of now just got endless boards with, it's got my Kanban in a corner, I've got user journey flows everywhere. We're starting to kind of bring all of that together. So some of that stuff which would have meant, you know, you've got, if you're not in the room, you weren't present, some of that is taken away, but you lose the context, you lose the ability to spark ideas off each other, you get a bit of screen fatigue. People can't sit for a whole day on Zoom and use a Miro board. It's not that exciting. Your brain will disappear. Nothing is it's not as good a substitute of, you know, sticking people in a room, locking the door and going, you've got lunch in an hour if we can get through this this problem. I think there's lots of good like tooling that's appearing, you know, things like Hotjar and User Zoom are really giving us access to what we need in a simple and easy way for talking to customers. And then you've got the traditional stack around data and analytics with some really cool tools that are starting to bring more data together, whether that's actual analytics and research data together. They're starting to appear, but they're not as mature as I think organizations need them to be confident to move away from the Adobes and the Googles of this world, to be able to say, yeah, we're definitely going to use something that's a lot more product focused to be able to allow product people to do the job that they want to do.
That's giving me a sense that, you know, I mean, I'm very aware at my age of how young the industry still is, relatively speaking, and I'm getting a real sense where you talk about sort of the lack of maturity in some of the technology, that's a real challenge. And I wanted to ask you about what thoughts you have about AI, because that's another one, although AI has been around for a while. Generative AI is, you know, really hitting home now. And I wondered whether you had any thoughts on how that might affect or impact product owners. I
think there are, I mean, if I talk from my day-to-day experience today, it's acting as a really great shortcut for some of the work that I might want to do. So, you know, if we think about product people need to keep engineering teams moving, right? So no one wants to sit and write acceptance criteria. Like ChatGPT can write acceptance criteria to give you a baseline, provided you give it the scope and the user story you want to change. That is a time-saving job. It removes some of that cognitive overload of taking some of the processing there that's just like writing stuff out can be done quite easily. So I think there's definitely an efficiency play from a product perspective. Also, I have generated some research questions out of ChatGPT as well, giving it, these are the things I want to find out. What questions would you didn't do a bad job. It still needed me as a human being to then finesse it, but it is certainly possible to achieve. I think the other opportunity areas for us really are around how can AI bring together that qualitative node and that quantitative node, and where today we all struggle with, have we got access to the right data? Do we have the right data skills? Can I get a data analyst? Actually, there's some real opportunities, I think, over time that will come of how can I put my data set and my known customer problems or challenges or opportunities together to actually get something like ChatGPT or some of the other models to start pulling out, these are the insights and the trends that I'm seeing in your data, and actually delivering more packaged insight. So it becomes a lot more sort of writing a research brief or a data brief to try and capture all of the pieces that you want. Actually, you get something that's more served to you, which you can then start to have a conversation with it about, okay, well, I want to understand this a bit more, understand that a bit more. But I think we're a way away from that in terms of organizations wanting their data to go into the hands of somebody else potentially. But also that quality. I mean, a lot of organizations will talk to you about, well, they always need someone in a transaction integrity or a business intelligence integrity to look at whatever insight gets generated, because we have nuances within our data. More and more organizations will need to clean their data and get it into a single place. So those organizations that haven't caught up and haven't got themselves into a place where they've got clean, quantitative data in a cloud platform that's in a really good structure are never going to be in a position where they can use that. So those legacy tech stacks are going to have to catch up to be able to get to that. And I think we may see some leapfrogging over time around how you can join those two things together. But I think that's probably where I see the initial opportunity areas is how can we be a bit more efficient and allow us to do more and focus where our human value is needed on decisions and trade-offs, which AI can't do because it doesn't understand the context. But equally then, how can it generate insight? How can it help us to answer the questions that we need to understand based on the information that we've got at our fingertips, knowing that we're generating more and more data every single day?
It's really interesting perspective, Rob. You pick up two things there that I think are really interesting about generative AI. One is this whole privacy thing about, well, do you give it your data? And if you do, on what terms? And the other is about the sort of bias inherent in the data, because there's such a massive data. How do you get yours both clean and in there in a way that you get out what you need? And we're a little way away from that, but I'm with you actually. I think it is coming, and it's quite an exciting time. I wanted to ask you about perhaps a product related success you're particularly proud of, and whether you could talk a little about that.
Yeah, I think there's a couple of things that I would point at, but I think for me the biggest one was something that we did at IG Loyalty, which is looking at how do we get value back to our customers faster. How do we get their Avios to them in a quicker way, knowing that we've got a lot of historical reasons why we don't do that? And actually, as a product function, not just being left with the how do you implement this feature, but actually taking it from scratch as no, we need to understand all of our data, which no one in our business did. They didn't understand the payment flows, didn't understand the risk. It was just this is too difficult. And actually really starting to break that down into, no, this is how our data works. This is why we shouldn't be worried about changing these things. This is how we can do the risk mitigation, and actually seeing the impact of that going live in terms of, we thought that it would really help us in terms of having increased speed on people getting their balances changing, would allow us to have a more regular conversation with our customers because they're seeing that in and out flow, and it would drive them back to the product. Actually, it didn't do that. It didn't get any success. In one way, it's a failure in that it didn't do what we thought it was going to do. But actually, what it taught us from a product perspective is, for us to be able to take more control over our product, we need to understand everything that sits underneath it. We need to understand the data. We need to understand the payment flows. We need to understand the financials. And actually, for us, that was liberating because it meant that we were able to have a really easy conversation internally then to go, well, they've got these people who are managing this product over here from a commercial perspective, or they're over here from a finance perspective or marketing perspective. They don't really understand how this stuff stitches together. We can do that. We know how it stitches together. So we can be the advocate for the customer here, but equally we can be the advocate internally because we know what drives what now. We have this really good understanding of what pressing a button here does over there on our commercial model, etc. So really, really proud of our efforts there and everything that the team did to kind of got that feature out quite quickly, but equally all the work that had to happen on from an engineering perspective, a data engineering perspective, and kind of our partners who helped us understand what a crazy world affiliate marketing is and how all the payment flows and things work.
Well, yes, definitely a crazy world in affiliate. And finally, what is your biggest learning since you've been working in the product area?
I think the biggest learning for me is Agile is a framework that's there to be played with. It's not a textbook. I think a lot of people start out in products and they go and do a Scrum product owner course, and they get told Scrum is the only Agile methodology that works, and you should apply it principally as it is in the textbook. And actually, the more you work with it, the more organizations that you work in, you find it's the principles that sit behind the Agile Manifesto are the things that you need to embody, not the methodology of Scrum or Kanban or SAFe. Like, those things are great, but they rarely work when you apply the textbook example, because there's nuance within an organization and the framework doesn't account for that. So I think a lot of people go into this space thinking, I need to understand it, I need to take the textbooks, I need to read every book that's out there. And actually, they're a great thought provoker, but they are, in my experience, very rarely applied in that uniform way to give success to an organization. So I'd say that was my biggest learning.
So much of what you've said actually sort of points to that, which is all about the organization and the culture and the roles, and how do you fit things into that as much as anything, and pay attention to it. Rob, it's been fascinating talking to you and hearing your views. Thank you so much for spending your time. I think people are going to be really interested in what you've got to say, and best of luck in your continuing role in product and representing the customer.
Great. Thank you, Paul.
Well, I hope you enjoyed listening to Rob as much as I did. His views speak so clearly about product and the role and how culture and the individuals in it affect it, the challenges that organizations and individuals face. And I think his thoughts on AI are also very relevant, very topical, and in my view, very accurate. Anyway, my name's Paul Blunden. I'm founder of UX247, and we help product owners, researchers, and designers deliver high-performing products and services. If you want to find out more about what we do, you can visit our website. That's UX247.com, or find me on LinkedIn. And of course, please subscribe to this channel. There'll be another interview coming along soon. Thanks very much for watching.